can't explain what he just did.
I saw it too, and I can't.
I've never seen that in all my days.
The good old hot take. The necessary evil of the sports world. Through the good ones, the bad ones, and the downright atrocious ones. We once again find ourselves racking our brains, trying to figure out how some people come up with this nonsense. But today, I've done the brain racking for you and found some of the hottest NBA takes on the internet. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the circus. Today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. With football season upon us and basketball right around the corner, save yourself the time and hassle of looking for good tickets and killer deals with SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. And with over 70,000 events happening every single day on SeatGeek, they've got anything and everything you're looking for. I've been using SeatGeek for years to find the best deals on my Trailblazers tickets. It's fast, it's easy, and watching them lose far too many games is a whole lot easier knowing I got a great deal. On the SeatGeek app, you can check the status of each available ticket for any game. And with their rating system, you can quickly see which tickets are a good deal, the green ones, and which tickets are a bad deal, the red ones. SeatGeek is safe, it's easy, and it's a guaranteed way to get the best deals for your tickets. And right now, SeatGeek is offering $20 off your first purchase when using promo code Jimmy. I've left a link to download the SeatGeek app in the description below. Just head over, use code Jimmy, and get $20 off your first purchase. It's been a while since we looked at some hot takes, and so after a long off season, I did my reluctant scrub through NBA social media. And to absolutely no surprise, there was no shortage of oddball takes. And here are some of the more interesting ones I came across. Now, our first take kind of blew up a few weeks ago because this NBA fan introduced an entirely new angle on the GOAT debate that many people, including myself, have never heard or considered before.
What's your most unpopular opinion?
I think that if LeBron came before Jordan, there wouldn't even be an argument about who's better.
Now, whether you agree or disagree, the take itself is actually really interesting. She doesn't go into more detail, so she's either implying that if LeBron came into the NBA in the 80s with his size and skills, he would have dominated the league so much that his resume would have made him the undisputed GOAT. Or she's implying that even if their careers remained the same and they just swapped spots on the timeline, LeBron's legacy would have been cemented as the GOAT and his resume and accomplishments would have been too overwhelming for Jordan to overtake him. But the first scenario is completely hypothetical. We don't know the extent of which LeBron would have dominated in Jordan's era. To assume we could just drop him in as a rookie in 1985 and he would win everything all the time is a bit naive. And even if we somehow could, it's difficult to imagine he would have accomplished more than MJ did. Now, scenario 2 is a bit more interesting. If their careers remain the same, but LeBron came before Jordan, would he be considered the GOAT by the majority of NBA fans? Even if LeBron came before Jordan and everything remained the same, their accomplishments and stats and impact, Michael Jordan would still be the greatest player of all time. In fact, there was a LeBron before Michael Jordan. His name is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Scored more points than anyone else in NBA history, greatest NBA prospect of all time, made it to the finals 10 times and won 6 championships, the most of any player at the time outside of the '60s Celtics, made the most All-NBA teams, had the most All-Star selections, had the most All-Defensive Team selections in NBA history by the time he retired, won 6 MVPs, still the most of any player in league history. Kareem literally accomplished everything in basketball many times over, had the frame and the skill set way ahead of his time, and was by far the best player in the league for an entire generation. In fact, Kareem's resume is actually better than LeBron's. He did everything LeBron has done and more. And still, people anointed Michael Jordan as the GOAT over Kareem, despite Kareem playing before MJ. There's nothing I can say that hasn't already been said. Michael Jordan was just way better than everyone else every single time he stepped foot on the court. He had such an overwhelming gap on everyone in the league that even when he was getting bounced out of the first round of the playoffs as a young guy who hadn't really done anything in the league yet, players and coaches around the NBA almost unanimously proclaimed that he was the greatest player to ever touch basketball. Just imagine if a player today won 3 titles in a row and then won 3 more titles in a row. and was the best offensive player, and the best scorer, and was first team all-defense every season, and was the biggest global sensation off the court. We are now a quarter century removed from Jordan's last days with the Bulls, and his brand is still way more relevant than anyone that has come in the league since. Even the old heads at the time, the guys who watched Kareem and Dr. J and Wilt, were joining the Jordan bandwagon. Now, I'll admit that there's some nuance being overlooked here. LeBron has played tougher competition. The league is far more talented now than it was 30 years ago. But even with all that considered, eras and competition, skill set, talent, Jordan would still be the GOAT, even if LeBron came before him and had a cemented position as the GOAT. I know this because there was an established, beloved, unanimous, and even more accomplished GOAT when Jordan came into the league. His name's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Michael Jordan took his spot as the greatest player of all time. This next take comes from a fan who says that Nikola Jokic peaked higher than Kobe, KD, and Kareem. And although scorching hot, there may be some truth to this. Let's take a look at the numbers. Here are the peak 3-season stretches from Kareem, Durant, Kobe, and Jokic. Now, clearly, Kobe was the best scorer of the four. Kareem was the best on defense, but pretty much every other metric falls in Jokic's favor. He's a bigger offensive threat than the other three with his scoring and playmaking. His relative team value, or how much he impacts his team's winning, is greater than the other three. He's virtually as productive as the other three, and he achieved this productivity on record high efficiency with a true shooting percentage that dwarfs the others. And he did this on relatively low usage. The eye test says Kobe or Durant were probably better at their peak. Most of us didn't watch Kareem, but his numbers and impact on a championship-winning team suggest he was even better than Kobe and KD at his peak. And still, Jokic has a slight lead on even Kareem. So in regards of the peaks of these four all-time greats, Jokic contributes the most to winning. He's the most efficient with his possessions and his scoring. He's more productive than Durant and Kobe, but not quite as productive as peak Kareem was. He possesses the greatest overall threat offensively. He has the most individual value to his team, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands as much to do it. So, yeah. I'd say if we're strictly talking about peaks, Jokic peaked higher than Kobe and Durant, and might have peaked higher than Kareem, but it's hard to say since I never actually watched him play. This is a good take. Now this fan says that Harden is a top 3 shooting guard ever. They changed the rules because he was too good. And he's 50% right. The NBA legitimately changed some rules to slow down peak Harden. It's actually crazy to look back at some of these stat lines from just a handful of seasons ago. Foul hunting, shot chucking, call it whatever you want. 36, 7, and 7 is wild. And let's not forget, if Durant doesn't join the Warriors, there's a decent chance Harden has a ring right now, and his legacy is completely altered. But he's still not a top 3 shooting guard in league history. Mike and Kobe are the clear 1-2, and so for Harden to be 3, he would have to be ahead of Dwayne Wade, which he's just not. As far as skills and talent, it's actually really close. But D. Wade's career and impact on winning teams was far greater than Harden's, and he's the clear 3rd best shooting guard of all time. But I do consider Harden as the 4th best shooting guard of all time, ahead of players like Clyde Drexler, Allen Iverson, and Reggie Miller. Now this next take comes from LeBron, who in an interview back in 2010 had this to say.
If I really wanted to, if I really wanted to be a scoring title, I could do it every single year. Every single year, I could really do it. But it doesn't matter.
Now, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, because according to 20 years of evidence, LeBron 100% could have won the scoring title in pretty much every season he's played in the league. In fact, I think there's a lot of players who could win the scoring title every year if they really wanted to. LeBron, KD, Steph, Dame, Giannis, Embiid, Booker, Luka, Kawhi. If you can get a bucket, you can get a bucket. The difference between scoring, let's say, 25 a game and 30 a game is simply shooting more shots. For example, in nearly every season MJ won a scoring title, he also led the league in shot attempts. By a lot. In fact, 24 of the last 30 scoring titles went to the player who attempted more shots than everyone else did. Among elite scorers, winning a scoring title usually comes down to an extra shot or two every game. Throughout LeBron's career, if he attempted as many shots as the league leader did, and his shooting splits stayed the same, which tends to be the case for volume scorers, he would have won 12 scoring titles, throughout his career, including 8 straight from 2008 to 2015. In fact, throughout Michael Jordan's 13 seasons with the Bulls, he averaged 23.3 shots per game. If LeBron attempted 23.3 shots per game throughout his career, he would have a career scoring average of over 32 points per game, the highest of all time. If LeBron tried to, he could have led the NBA in scoring nearly every season of his career. And our last take for today actually comes from Michael Jordan himself. Now, over the years, Michael Jordan rarely has much to say when it comes to his opinions on the game. He has mastered the ability to dodge tough questions and usually keeps his opinions pretty ambiguous. But when it comes to the Magic versus Curry debate, MJ was definitive on where he stands.
Although greatest of anything is always a debate, I beg to differ on greatest point guard of all time with what you said. Magic Johnson is easily the best point guard of all time. Steph Curry is very close, but not in front of Magic. You must define point guard to really have a serious debate. Steph Curry is by far the best shooter of all time. Yes, his movement has created many shots for his teammates. He's a career 43% three-point shooter. But Magic Johnson invented the triple-double. Not true invented, but makes it more noticeable in terms of the impact on the game. It's a point guard stat, to be honest. Magic was the best. We can go on, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you get the point. By the way, Magic has 5 NBA championships.
Wow.
That quote this morning at 5:45 was from Mr. Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Wow, how about that?
And he asked me,
Wow.
he asked me to read it on the air. He said, I'm not backing up for it. He said, I'm tired of this argument about Magic Johnson not being the best point guard in the history of the game. He is the best point guard in the history of basketball.
Sure, when you look at their careers at face value, Magic is still much greater than Steph. But these debates continue to fail to bring up the difference between the best and the greatest. Up to this point, Magic Johnson had a greater career than Steph. But was he a better basketball player? Magic dominated his era more than Steph has dominated his, so by definition, he is the greater player. He achieved more. But if we're looking at skill set and ability and context, then I think Steph is the better player. If you had to choose between the two to play on your team, who would you pick? As a quick experiment, here are 2 former NBA players. Both all-time great players, both played in the league for over a decade, but one of them is more accomplished than the other. It's pretty obvious that player A is greater than player B. Except player A is 50s NBA legend Bob Pettit, and player B is Giannis. Now, this is an exaggerated example, but the principle is the same as the Magic-Curry debate. Bob Pettit dominated his era like Giannis has dominated his, but Giannis's era is vastly better than Bob's was. Magic was revolutionary for his time, but his time was nearly 40 years ago. The game has taken leaps and bounds over the last 40 years. To compare stats and achievements to decide who had the greater career is pretty simple. But to use those metrics to decide who was the better basketball player when they played 4 decades apart from each other is tough to do. If the question is who is the better player, I think the answer is Steph. If the question is who is a greater point guard, well, then the answer, for now, is still Magic Johnson. And unfortunately, that's all the racking my brain can handle in one sitting. But y'all know the drill. Leave a comment with your hot take, and as usual, the hotter, the better. Or worse. And as always, until next time.